If you are looking for some absolute drama and people going hard at each other for some of the absolute smallest of inconveniences or annoyances, look no further than the fabulous app of Nextdoor. Now, when I was creating this video, the top cons of Fort Collins, Colorado, I jumped onto that app just to look at some of the things that maybe what are people complaining about, and well, everything. So kind of stopped that research and went different routes, basically looking at some of the perspectives I had, comments, interactions, engagements, questions, and concerns of people who have moved to, lived in, and are from Fort Collins, Colorado. So today, in no particular order except the final con is definitely something that you're going to want to stick around for, because it's something that is very close to me, at least this time of the year, is the top cons in Fort Collins, Colorado. What's up, everybody? My name is Patrick Soukup with Soukup Real Estate Services, and this is the Living in Fort Collins channel. If you're new, please consider subscribing. If what you are looking at doing is learning everything there is to know about Fort Collins, eating, sleeping, playing, top pros from the video last week, and this week, top cons. And if at the end of the video you've enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, maybe even share it. Now, we are licensed real estate agents in the state of Colorado, so if you're considering buying, selling, or investing, give us a call, text, or email. We have got your back. But jumping into today's video, the top cons, let's get rocking. Fort Collins is continually ranked one of the best places to live. Recently, Forbes ranked it #1 in the state of Colorado as far as top cities. And one of those things is the unemployment rate. And yes, Fort Collins definitely has a low unemployment rate, but I would say one of the things that we are lacking is really this big tech hub, tech driver, and that could be because of a lot of different reasons, whether that be the development process, the incentives the city's giving, but we really haven't attracted that big tech company, those fangs, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, which is now Alphabet. But whether that's a good thing or bad thing, I know that one of my good buddies, when he mentors and now buddies, when he was the mayor and really involved with the city of Fort Collins, his big kind of like feather in the hat was that he brought Anheuser-Busch to northern Colorado. And with it came lots of high paying jobs and opportunities and an economic opportunity for those people in and around Fort Collins. And Amazon recently came to Loveland, just south of us, and that city really was pushing for Amazon to come here. And Amazon felt with the employment opportunities, they're going to bring in 1,000 workers. But Fort Collins just really hasn't seen that tech scene develop and build. There are some cool tech startups, Bilgo, Laborjack, and amongst others, Turbo Tenant. But really, I think for us to be a thriving community and employment sector with high paying incomes, our tech scene needs to increase. Sorry, kids are playing upstairs right now. It is Christmas break. They just got a whole bunch of new toys, but we will keep on rocking and rolling. So anyways, parlaying from that is the incomes that are needed to survive and thrive in Fort Collins, Colorado. You know, it used to be that you could be a teacher, you know, whether it was a PE teacher, first grade teacher, and then a cop or a firefighter, and do very well for yourself here in Fort Collins. But no longer really is that the case. I do think wages are increasing, so those firefighters, cops, teachers, and everything like that are getting pay increases, but not nearly at the rates or levels that they need to. And I think that in Fort Collins, you really need to be a six-figure income family to survive and thrive here. And when you look at the median salaries for teachers and then, you know, firefighters, police officers, and things of that nature, you either need to be a dual income family, which then increases your living expenses by way of childcare. You can no longer be a stay-at-home mom or dad, and also need to, you know, have other things, vehicles to transport the kids because you're not going to be able to drive them. But all that being said, I believe that Fort Collins has become a six-figure city to be able to be surviving and thriving here in town. And some of our income levels just don't support that. So you see teachers and police officers and blue-collar workers kind of moving out to Wellington, to Windsor, to Greeley, And from there, your vehicle, your transportation costs do increase, which, then drives me into my next con, our public transportation. The city of Fort Collins just passed its modes of transportation plan, really going to be putting in $100 million into the city of Fort Collins, more than that, to help bike safety, walking, trails, things of that nature, to help this 15-minute community with commercial and everything that you need within 15 minutes. Now, that's amazing, that's great, but what we don't have is an amazing public transportation. It's okay. We had the Max Transit that was built, just a few years ago, that's just rarely used. Transport Fort Collins, there's barely anybody ever standing at the bus stops. We have more bus stops and more routes coming. It is currently free, but still very low engagement. I find myself wanting to try and use the public transportation, but then trying to figure out, okay, well, if I have a showing or if I have, work to do. Fort Collins is really a sprawled out community that, there's not this big density with high rises up in the middle of town. Now there's going to be more density coming, but we are a sprawled out community, and not just north and south, but, east and west. We do have the foothills along our west, so kind of limiting how far west we can develop, but out east, and people live in Windsor, Wellington, Severance, Timnath, and Johnstown, and find themselves commuting to and from Fort Collins for work, or Greeley, or Windsor, or Denver. But our public transportation, we do have the bus tang, groom transportation to get you down to DIA, but I think that over the years we will definitely need to see that public transportation increase, get better, because I can tell you, yes, Fort Collins can have days like today, which is about 55 degrees, sunny, warm, you can ride your bike and be just fine. Be careful, because there's definitely places of ice, especially with north covered sidewalks and things of that nature because of shadow and shades. But I am not going to be riding my bike when it is pretty dang cold out. I will be jumping in my car, and if maybe there were, I don't even know whether it's a rail line. I know I get hemmed up by some people that get mad at me about a kind of a highway that goes around, Carpenter and then through Taft and Overland. But regardless, it does take a minute to get from the southeast side to the northwest side of Fort Collins, and the public transportation isn't necessarily reliable enough for me to put my faith into it to be able to operate efficiently as a dad, as a business owner, and as a person just living in Fort Collins, maybe going to get groceries and things of that nature. But one of the first modes of transportation that really brought Fort Collins onto the map, along with the college, was the train. And unfortunately, the train was built on Mason, which really cuts the town in half. If College Avenue is the dividing line east and west, Mason is a block to the west of College Avenue, and it is a relatively busy train line. And that train going north and south is absolutely an annoyance to the folks that are going east and west and getting caught behind it, whether that's during the workday, the noise, the train, the train horns. I live off of LeMay, and it was the morning the other day, and I don't know what time it was, but it was relatively early. So no ambient noise, really, no kind of alternate noises going on, driving people, things like that nature. It was pretty dang quiet, and I could just hear the slightest faint of a train. And I'm about 1.5 miles away, well, 1.25 miles away from that train. So I would say the train cutting down the middle of town is an annoyance for a lot of people, but it is extremely important to our economy. It was important to the development of Fort Collins. So I am glad and grateful that the train's there. Otherwise, I don't know if Fort Collins would necessarily be here today. So that being said, you don't have a passenger train on that line. It is more of a commerce-driven, business-driven line. No public transportation. For that to get down to Denver, you are going to either need to jump onto the Mustang, or leading me into my next con is the construction on I-25. It just feels like it is never ending. Like we are always 10 years behind the construction that we are needing and needed because of the growth of Fort Collins, Northern Colorado, Larimer and Weld County, close to 1 million people here in the next few years. And we have this 2-lane interstate, for the longest time going north and south. And now we will have it being 3 lanes each way, one being a toll lane and an express lane. But when that is complete, by the end of December 2023, or maybe the beginning of 2024, who knows? It just feels like we're probably going to be at a position that we're going to need a 3rd or 4th lane. And so the construction will continue. And while they do a great job working at nights and things of that nature, due to, inclement weather, freezing, traffic, timing, all that good stuff, the time that we can work on those roads isn't necessarily ultra limited, but it does put a hindrance on how many days in a row you can work, how quickly, how long you can work throughout the night, and things of that nature. So it just feels like I-25 is always under construction, which is just super annoying. Now, we've talked about these different cons of Fort Collins, and with them, there's so many different things that are exciting about living in Fort Collins with the public transportation and the direction that City of Fort Collins is wanting to do. It's a platinum rated bike community with the drive of trying to get more cars off the road and onto bikes and walking and scooters, electric bikes and things of that nature. And there's always things that we are working on. We have a great city council that is trying to do, the best they can. I think whether, blue or red, I do think that people do have the best intentions for Fort Collins at their heart, and are transitioning from, more of a red county to purple to now, relatively blue county. But regardless, I think Fort Collins and the city of Fort Collins is doing a great job of trying to maintain its character, values, kindness, what they're doing to people as far as welcoming and things of that nature, and trying to maintain the beauty of Fort Collins, of why historically it's been ranked so well as the best place to live moving forward now and into the future. But I will talk to you about my final con, and the thing that maybe because of the time of year, and maybe because over the last few weeks we have seen some dramatic weather changes, I would say, is the weather of Fort Collins. You better like your 4 seasons, because you are going to get all 4 of them. You are going to get a spring, summer, fall, winter. Now, my absolute favorite season is fall, with probably a lot of millions and millions of people across America. Fort Collins is gorgeous. The foliage going up the Pooter, all that good stuff. But you could absolutely see late August, September, you could see hailstorms, even in July, very hot summer days, thunder clouds rolling in, bringing with it potential for hail. Now, knock on wood, we haven't necessarily had any bad hailstorms over the last few years, thank goodness. Hopefully we can continue that forward. But I will say, when it happens quick, it happens fast, and people are just like, holy cow. And you'll see if you drive throughout Colorado, these dealerships are now kind of putting covers over their vehicles because of how many hailstorms we've had, insurance claims, and things of that nature. But then we move into our winters, and man, I just, we've had a 24-inch snowstorm, a couple years ago that just, it just hit you, and it hit quick. I remember I was playing golf a week before that storm, and somebody coming up to my table and saying, "Are you guys ready for the snowstorm that's coming?" And we're looking at Sunny and literally sitting in and having lunch in our t-shirts, and we're like, "What storm?" And he goes, "Oh man, we're supposed to have a 2-footer coming up." And I just thought the guy was full of it. And literally a week later, we had 2 feet of snow, and I did a video on this, and it was just crazy. And it, at that time, you get concerned for, roofs and things of that nature. And generally speaking, you're okay. But I remember when I was in school in 7th grade, it was early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. Can't remember how old I am. But we did have this massive, heavy, thick, wet snowstorm that shut down schools for, I think it was a week or weeks, because of the weight of the snow was busting these flat roofs. My middle school, Bolts Middle School, was shut down for weeks because of the weight of the snow that came down on it. And, when you have those snowstorms, maybe it's those memories or whatever, it's just like a little bit concerning. But then we also have these polar vortexes. We just had one just a couple weeks ago, that the temperature dropped from the 50s to 0 within 60 minutes, really, 60 to 90 minutes. It was crazy. The wind was just whirling, and all of a sudden, the temperature just dropped and plummeted. And then a week later, we have 55 degrees, it's sunny, all the snow is gone, and you're just like, what? and that was over the Christmas weekend. And, don't get me wrong, all places have snow, but in Fort Collins, you're then gonna have this, spring wind. And in 2022, I remember looking at my wife and I was just like, man, it just feels super windy and just awful. And there was a fire down in Boulder that really, it happened during the kind of winter months, but it was kind of emphasized by the wind that we were having at that time and how dry it was, and the weather just kind of pushed these fires across and made them spread very quickly. But wind in 2022 was just something that I looked at each other and was like, man, you can have a great day and it's just ruined by the wind. You ride your bike and you're riding one direction flying, and you ride the other direction and you're getting pushed back by the wind. And I just, it got to be a little old, and we were like, when is this spring going to end and when is summer going to arrive? Now, thankfully, humans have this great ability to forget things. And why women have multiple babies, because we're able to forget the pain, I'm not talking out of experience here. I'm just saying, my wife had 3 kids. Don't know how she did it, because after I saw her have the first one, I was like, nah, I'm good. I would probably not have another one, but she was down to have 2 more, and grateful for those kiddos. But you forget that there's hailstorms and these thick snows and the wind that happens. Maybe it's because we live in a beautiful community, that is Fort Collins in northern Colorado, but it is something that during those times you're like, I want to go to Arizona and have 80 degrees, and whether it's play golf or jump into a pool, I don't like negative 17 degrees. Or holy cow, we just had a hailstorm and now we're going to have to go through the insurance and the annoyance of the claim of the roof and the paint and the contractors. Or, it's like, geez, this wind is brutal. It would be a beautiful day and it's just ruined by the wind. So I would say the last con of Fort Collins is the weather, the unpredictability of it, that if you live here, you absolutely have to like your 4 seasons, or have a house here and another house somewhere else, whatever that might be. But overall, Fort Collins is pretty phenomenal, but those are the cons of Fort Collins. If you want to watch the pros or another video about Fort Collins, definitely feel free to watch here. But I appreciate you guys watching. If you have any questions or comments, leave those below. Until next time, guys, take care.